The UT Austin Portugal annual conference is fast approaching, and you don't want to miss out on our community's largest knowledge-sharing event. To get you in the conference's mood, we have 2 exclusive warm-up online sessions that will offer you actionable and practical advice. On October 18, Texas Innovation Center's Executive Director, Van Truskett, invites you to reflect on the critical factors supporting faculty entrepreneurial endeavors. Truskett, herself a US recognized scientist and entrepreneur, will explore the intricacies of the university-based research commercialization process. On the 19th, Júlio Burli, science communicator at I3S, leads an interactive session that will unpack the fundamentals of effective science communication. Under Burlido's expert guidance, you will learn the importance of understanding the plurality and diversity of publics scientists engage with, and the skills required for constructive interaction to deal with publicly relevant issues. 2 unique learning experiences you cannot afford to lose.
All right, so I think we have the go-ahead. Good afternoon, everyone in Portugal and in Europe. Good morning, everyone in Austin, Texas. Good morning, Van, and welcome. It's great to have you here. We've been trying to get you to address this the UT Austin Portugal program in many different ways. I'm really happy that we found a really good place to start. So thank you. So just a little bit about your background. And Ben has a background in nanotech, actually, in developing technology, but also actually developing business out of it. And so that's why we thought, since we're talking here about commercializing university research innovations today, we thought that Van was a great person to have to come talk to me about it, because she has many years of technical experience and managerial experience, actually. And she played a critical role in raising VC dollars to a startup named Molecular Imprints, and then actually taking it through an exit to Canon Corporation in 2014, if I remember correctly. And so having someone with technical background, with startup experience, and actually with a very hands-on exit, it's very instrumental, because I know that a lot of people that are listening in today they want to hear about the ins and outs and the practicalities of it. So I'm not gonna, I said, you can read all about Van's achievements online. We have it right in our website and at the University of Texas as well. But basically, the reason we have Van here as well is because in the UT Austin Portugal program, we for a long time that we have been bridging these 2 areas, the research and the commercialization side. And so moving ideas from lab to the market is important everywhere, not only for economic growth, but also to bring actually solutions and services to people's problems. And so this is a great example. Van's experience is a great example. And so without further ado, Van, I'll just give you the floor. Thank you again
for that introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. So I'm going to give a talk that's going to have 3 parts to it. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself and my background to give you some insight into how I approach technology commercialization, and then tell you a little bit about the Texas Innovation Center, which is where I'm standing here today. And then, because we are talking about innovation and technology commercialization, I want to tell you about what we're doing to seed and promote and inspire innovation here at UT. So a little bit about myself. I'm a chemical engineer by training, bachelor's at UT Austin, Hook 'em Horns, and got my PhD at Johns Hopkins University. So after I received my PhD, I was not sure what I was going to do. Came back to Austin and joined a startup called Molecular Imprints. And basically what we worked on is building a nanotechnology tool called called an imprint lithography tool. And what this tool did was it carried out a process called step and flash imprint lithography to essentially make nano features. And this is an example of our tool. It's about the size of a bedroom, and it has amazing temperature control abilities to it. But the gist of it is that it uses a glass mass that allows you to imprint nano features down to 10 nanometers in a one-to-one correspondence. And so whatever you put in your glass mass, it will perfectly replicate that pattern, even if there's a defect in it. And for me, what I did is I worked specifically on the core technology, which is what you're seeing here, related to essentially figuring out a way to put drops onto the silicon substrate. And so if you're if you know about the traditional way that resist materials placed on silicon, it's through a spin coating process. And so here we're saving materials, and then we're targeting where we're putting the material and controlling the flow by dispensing droplets. And so I worked on a number of inkjet print heads that allowed us to optimize how we would put down the drops or form the drops. And so in my research, I developed technology that took us from 10 nanoliters all the way down to about 10 femtoliters. And so that was pretty exciting to develop the hardware, understand the fluid mechanics behind it, as well as understand the materials that come together for the formulations. So I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And so you know that in 2014, the company was acquired, and I stayed with the company for an additional 2 years. And then at that point, I was searching for my next gig, my next adventure. And that's when technology commercialization came into my life. Before then, I had no idea what it was about, not realizing that the universities had a tech transfer arm to it. Even though I was in the startup, it was kind of just hanging out there in the background. So learned extensively by coming to UT in 2017, working in the Office of Technology Commercialization for a few years, and then taking on a second role here at the Texas Innovation Center as of January last year. And so have learned a lot about what technology commercialization from the university side is about and how that transitions into a startup company. So amazing adventure that I'm going to tell you about that our faculty and our students have experienced. But now let me tell you a little bit about the center and what we do, because it is a part of how we start the process for taking research and translating it. So here at the Texas Innovation Center, we work with faculty and grad students to inspire them to look at their research and figure out ways to create a endeavor. I'm not going to say product, because you need to kind of understand what you're doing before you actually say you have a product. You know, what are the needs? What are the unmet needs? And then we take it into commercialization once we're assured that someone needs it and is willing to buy it. So the Texas Innovation Center sits in the Cockrell School of Engineering. And what we're doing is we're really trying to break down the startup ecosystem silos here on campus. And to do that, we've brought on board as a stakeholder and collaborator, the College of Natural Science, the Office of the Vice President of Research, as well as our Office of Technology Commercialization, working cohesively together to provide a broad range of resources, providing a continuum from the institutional level all the way to the school, college, and department, following this endeavor all the way through. So at the center, the components that come together to help our faculty and our students kind of demystify what technology transfer and startup is about, and creating a safe environment for people to just explore. You don't necessarily have to come with this conviction of like, I'm going to start a startup company. What we're really asking is, if you're curious, let's come and explore. Let's get those ideas and components in your head so you know what the journey is going to look like. And so here we have co-working space, which is where I'm at. We have a wet lab incubator space that we're bringing in up. And then we have what's called Startup in a Box, which I'll tell you a little bit about. It's a very exciting feature that we have here. And then finally, as all innovation centers and incubators and accelerators, we have our network of mentors and advisors, which we call the Friends of the Texas Innovation Center. So if you're ever in Austin, please come visit us in this building. It's the Engineering Education Research Building. And we have about 4,000 square feet of open desk space that you can come grab a desk and work out of while we're open. We've got conference rooms that you can utilize. So please come visit me. Here's an example of one of our events that we love holding, where we bring together the community here at the university with our external community here in Austin or nationally. And this is an example of our founders, our faculty and our students who've given 4-minute lightning round pitches to the Central Texas Angel Network. And then afterwards, everybody kind of just mingle and meet. And so really utilizing this place as an interface for things to blossom forward. I mentioned that we have a wet lab incubator space, and it's undergoing renovation right now. It sits in the J.J. Pickle Research Center, and it's going to have 21 feet of fume hood space. And the idea behind it is to provide space for STEM-based engineering science work. So where you can go to develop your product, de-risk it, utilizing an environment where you can work with reactive chemistries. And so the one nice thing about the space that's very unique is that this is on UT property, but we've got an exemption where any startup with an option or a license with UT is eligible to apply for the space. And when they come in and utilize the space, any new IP that's created belongs to the startup company. So that adds great value to the startup company and will help in incentivizing an investment, as well as the fact that we provide wraparound service and helping them accelerate their growth. So Startup in a Box is very important, and it's very popular. And the reason being is that we at the Texas Innovation Center is a one-stop shop for our faculty and our students. They come here and we bring in legal advice dealing with incorporation so that they can learn the very different types of incorporation, whether it's a C Corp, S Corp, benefit Corp. We talk about the various aspects of business transactions, interpreting what a term sheet, investment term sheet looks like, what the terminology, what are the different types. We even bring in immigration attorneys to talk with our faculty and our students so they can understand what the necessary process and protocols are so that they can continue on their journey when they graduate, in particular for our students. For medical device therapeutics, we have people who are knowledgeable in FDA regulatory aspects. And so having them come in and talk about that pathway, talk about especially the costs and some of the bottlenecks so people can start getting their heads wrapped around it. We bring in turnkey product designers, manufacturers. And so early on, we need to start talking and thinking about what does it take to bring together a product that you can sell from the lab all the way through to its final packaging. The idea is that not that in a month or two, you're going to create this product, but to understand what the timeline is required and what the cost is, because there are going to be revisions, and what type of revisions are those going to be. And so just, really understanding and scoping what you'll need. And then whether you're a company or just starting out and you're one person versus like 10 plus people, we bring in HR firms and CPA firms so that you can understand what are the compliance issues, how do you work with your employees, how do you handle the funding. And so it's so important to get all this in place, and we don't want people to be wandering about and be lost in this aspect of company formation. And so really providing it all here to lower the bar to entry. And then, of course, lastly, our friends. It's a selected group of investors here in Austin and nationally, as well as our advisory board members, as well as our alums who are in executive positions, technical and non-technical. They have turned into not just a group of mentors, but really a network of experts who come in, and depending on the background of the company, can provide a lot of insight. And these are people who not just give advice, but they roll up their sleeves and get in and do some of the work with us. And they're also advisors to myself and the center. So any questions so far?
I don't think so. I don't see any. I'm monitoring, Van. Thank you.
Okay, so let me tell you now a little bit about the companies that we cover here at the center. We have in our portfolio over 30 companies, and 10 are female founded. 3 are from underrepresented minority founders. And we cover a wide variety of technologies. So here's just a handful of some of the technologies in the area of advanced material, alternative energy. We cover biosciences, data, analytics, and software. So things in internet, enterprise security, unstructured data, graph technology. We work on companies dealing with robotics, rehabilitation robotics, worker robotics, and companies in healthcare, a wide variety here. And then also EdTech. We have a company in food tech that is developing essentially a structured meat that has a scaffolding that can be melted away or tuned in the meat to give it different flavors and structure. And their goal is to eventually make a barbecue brisket with this cultured meat. Of course, we're in Texas, we're in Austin, Texas. And so you got to make barbecue brisket. And so also a number of companies dealing in sensors, instrumentation, display, so 5G, touchless gesture recognition, chemical sensors that are at point of use as sensitive as an NMR. And believe it or not, we've got consumer goods as well as social and experiential. So a lot of diverse technologies here that we cover at the Texas Innovation Center. And you know, I am learning every day through our network of advisors and mentors in terms of how to help the wide variety of companies here and having fun. UT have had a number of successes in the last year. So through the efforts here, through our efforts at the Office of Technology Commercialization, you know, we've helped companies connect and build their network and find ways for funding or talent. One particular company raised $2.6 million, and this is Lantha Sensors, a chemical startup coming out of the chemistry department with Professor Simon Humphrey. We have a robotics company called Harmonics that secured $7 million. And this is technology from Dr. Ashish Deshpande from the mechanical engineering department. And then, of course, we also have a company called Celodyne coming out of Professor Delia Milliron's lab, developing a membrane for high temperature use in fuel cells. So just a handful of companies that have come out of UT in the last 3 years to inspire you and everyone else to continue on this journey of commercialization. And so the last topic I want to cover today is to talk about innovation methods and what we're doing here at the Texas Innovation Center at UT to help spur innovation. When I got on campus and started looking into and working on technology commercialization, what I encountered was that at the university, we have lots and lots and lots of solutions, but no home for these solutions. We had features that didn't have products. And so, this gave me an opportunity to really start looking and diving into what are the various innovation methods out there? How do you utilize it? And so this is just one simple example of the process of launching a company. We can call it the innovation methods pathway, and a number of different innovation methods out there that people utilize. And so for me, it wasn't clear where and when, what level of maturity you really utilize all of this, because at some point they're just names, they're lingo. And so today I'm going to talk to you about needs-driven innovation, which is what we're developing here at UT. But depending on your pathway, whether you're at the insight starting point, defining your problem, figuring out what your solution is, and developing your business model to then launch, you're going to utilize these various different methods. So there's design thinking, jobs to be done, that covers this section of the development, problem and solution in some business model. There's something called agile. There's lean startup method, and there's business canvas. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of summary on each of these and then go into needs driven, because needs driven is really where we all should start before we jump into these other more mature methodologies. And so in doing some of the research, what I realized was it's not just these handful of innovation methods, but there's actually more than 67 innovation methods for you to choose from. And so it becomes very confusing how to utilize them, interplay with the various ones. And some of them actually sound like they're the same things. But let's just talk about a couple. Let's start with these here, because these are the ones that are most used in the industry. So first is design thinking. So this is a method that is good when it comes to understanding the problem area and identifying the first users. It begins with gathering many insights through discussion with users and stakeholders, followed by the bundling of all the insights that you have identified, where it's identifying important pain points, problems, or tasks that needs to be completed. Then after that, you find a large number of possible solutions before the most promising ideas are prototyped and tested. So design thinking focuses mainly on qualitative and not as much on quantitative insights. So that's where you want to use design thinking. So now let's talk about lean startup. What is the essence of lean startup? So it's used where there is already a good understanding of what your problem is at hand. Lean regards everything as a hypothesis or assumption up to validation. So that even a good understanding of the problem space is only an assumption. Lean tends to first specify assumptions on a customer-oriented canvas and then prioritize and validate the highest risks of these assumptions for the entire product. The process of validating assumptions consists of creating an experiment where you build, testing it where you measure, and finding out whether the assumptions or the hypothesis is still valid through your learning. So Lean uses qualitative insights early on, but then later on forces you to define actionable quantitative data to measure how effectively your solution addresses the problem and whether the growth of this strategy is on track. So that's Lean. Now, what is Agile? So Agile is, give me 1 second, is just like dealing with the uncertainty of your problem, your solution, and market assumptions. So Agile is a good way to deal with uncertainty in product development specifically. It's not necessary to specify every detail of a product in advance. So we should define and prioritize a backlog of values to deliver and work in short sprints to deliver and test the value as part of short sprints. And so Agile is a great way to start thinking about like the various uncertainties of your product. Lastly, I want to give you a summary of what the business canvas model is about. So this is a great way to visually see what your business plan would look like without going through the overhead of writing up a complete document. It's such a great way to outline the number of different scenarios, providing focus and flexibility without like diving in and committing to a whole report. And so you could create several different business canvas models and then compare them against each other before you actually start writing up your business model. So that is a summary of the top innovation methods that people utilize today. So I want to dive in and tell you a little bit about what we're doing here at UT Austin at the Texas Innovation Center that lives at the beginning of all of this. And it's inspired by the Stanford Biodesign program, which is a process to essentially manage stakeholder complexity. Basically, it's the complexity of like, where do we start in thinking about our startup endeavor, our product, our unmet needs, and how do we mature it? And so here, at the Texas Innovation Center, what we're doing is we're looking at taking just the aspect of identifying needs. So the Stanford Biodesign program is focused on essentially developing technologies in, as the name says, bio and life science areas. And it's a 2-year program. And what we're doing here at UT Austin is we're taking this program and shrinking it down to a 7-week program and seeing if we can educate people fast enough and give them tools to then form a company if that's what they intend on doing it. And the way this program works is that you go out and you look at many, many different needs. And then you start filtering through those needs until you get your final concept that has the best value to it. And so what's centered about understanding what needs to start with, and this is where in any endeavor, you really need to understand what your unmet needs are. And what I like about this program is it provides a very systematic way of stating what your need is through this need statement. So you literally write a need statement that says a way to solve a specific problem in a well-characterized population. And the word population is ambiguous because you don't want to start honing in and say that it's a customer. And the next step in this need statement is a way to solve specific problem in a well-characterized population in order to achieve a measurable outcome. And so this measurable outcome is very much data-driven, not based on your intuition. And so it's very systematic in how we approach trying to understand needs. Another way of writing a needs statement is simply a way to, and then you specify your problem, and then for a population, you specify that population in order to find an outcome. And so in the medical device space, it would sound like the following: a way to perform point of care testing for patients with skin lesions in order to enable accurate, inexpensive diagnosis of malignant melanoma by a dermatologist. So this is very specific, but when you start out with a need statement, at the onset, it is ambiguous. And then through doing interviews and discovery, your need statement becomes more specific based on all this data that you've received. But what you don't do in this need statement is say what the solution is or solutions. So you leave that open-ended. And what's nice about this is that you are focused only on the needs first. And so for our researchers here, what it opens the possibility for is that if you find out what your need is, then the research, the solution that you've developed, you can then pivot it to the right market area. So here I'm giving you an example in the bio space. It's also been very useful in the consumer product. And actually, this particular product was developed based on writing a needs statement, where the needs statement was a way to pour one glass of expensive wine for people who want to try an expensive wine without needing to open an entire bottle. And so a whole business has emerged based on this needs statement. And a little bit about our program here in Austin. We launched this program in the spring of 2021. It's a 7-week program. And what we did was we brought together an interdisciplinary team. And this program has collaborators from MD Anderson's Breast Surgical Oncology Department, with the McCombs Business School, Texas Venture Lab, with scientists in the College of Natural Science, and our engineers in the Cockrell School of Engineering. So we're bringing together engineers, scientists, business members, MBAs, and then clinicians from MD Anderson. And so bringing together a team that has all the right strengths and weaknesses where we can help refine them, and allowing people to understand each other in terms of communication and utilizing those strengths to then figure out the market needs better through interviews. And so out of this 7-week program, we formed 3 cohorts. We formed 3 teams, and of the 3 teams, 2 teams have moved on to incorporate companies and created IP that they filed with the university. So these were unanticipated outcomes. With the original goal of launching this was just to educate people on the method of finding needs and understanding where to really start. And so we're on our way right now to forming our next cohort for the spring semester. So very excited about this. Our next thing that we're doing with this program, this needs-driven program, is that we've tested this out in terms of proving that we can shorten the method down in the bio space. And over the next year, we're going to be developing a framework to address non-bio areas. So for instance, energy space or space tech. And so it's exciting times coming up. Yes, Marco, I saw that there are some questions.
Yes, thank you, Van. So a couple of questions. The first one, they're both from the same person. So thank you, Ana Pablo, for asking. So the first question is, well, she appreciates your wonderful talk, man. So it's which I fully share. And the question is, can you please tell us more about the process to discover the needs for which your technology, the nano imprinter, would be suitable for? So how did you, how did you manage to find the needs? Which are those needs, and a little bit of that process of discovery for that specific product?
Okay, so essentially, how did nano lithography come about? So this came about with the fact that photolithography essentially had its diminishing returns, as you all know. There's only so much you could do with the mask and the light beam that is accessible. And so there are other competing technologies out there like extreme UV, but it does take some costs in terms of infrastructure. And so an alternative to just using a mask and projecting the pattern was that SV Srinivasan, a professor here in mechanical engineering, with Grant Wilson, a professor in chemistry, came together and basically merged precision equipment machinery with developing resists that would allow one to create patterns utilizing a molding process. And so they were looking at essentially trying to create something that could be run at room temperature, very low overhead in terms of, creating a special environment for it. Secondly, looking at a process that would be low cost. And then lastly, a process that would be fast, increase the throughput of patterning. And so, so molding became kind of in this case, became kind of an obviousness for them in terms of entering into the semiconductor manufacturing patterning market. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you. The second question is about the Innovation Center, actually. It's what types of institutions or companies are eligible to use the Texas Innovation Center?
So definitely any company that has IP or research from the university. And so typically what we do is we work closely with our Office of Technology Commercialization to figure out like who has filed a disclosure, who's interested in exploring startup companies or commercialization. And actually there are other pathways to commercialization than just licensing or starting a company that I'm learning. We are also working on with other researchers here on creating products such as a professor who through an NSF grant that has an outreach educational component, created this fossil finding board game that we're in the midst of commercializing, where the university now is going to sell this product and will receive money back for research student scholarship. And so in this case, we didn't need to form a startup. So back to your question about who can utilize this. So you have IP with UT or research. And when I say the research part, there are certain areas of research where you could have a copyright or it's open source. So this is where we encounter our software companies having no IP, no patents is what I'm referring to. And we still work with these companies and we work with our grad students. So you kind of have to start out at the university, but then when you graduate, for example, as a grad student, we still stay with you because we want your endeavor to thrive and continue. And so we have students and faculty who we've worked with for the past few years who are now on their Series A and B fundraising, where we still continue to work with them. The case where we don't really work with UT affiliated people is like, if you've been out of the university for 10 years and you come back, we do want to help in terms of providing connections and so on, but our main efforts are to seed new innovations, first and foremost, that are current at the university. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. And I do have a question from Barbara, actually, an interesting question, which is, what has been the most difficult idea to commercialize at Texas Innovation Centers to date, and why?
Well, that's a good question.
Most challenging.
They're all challenging. I'm going to say, to pick from all of the challenges. Oh my goodness. You know, it's all challenging, but yet at the same time, you know, there's serendipity and luck involved in these aspects, right? I've had situations where I'm like standing in South by Southwest, I'm standing in line to pick up my badge, and I meet somebody, and I'm like, okay, well, you got to go meet the startup that we're working on at UT, or you need to come and maybe be a mentor, give some advice. And I would say, you know, I have been working with a startup that creates a cathode material with zero cobalt. And I think, you know, one of the most difficult things was when Evan and Wanda were just starting out as grad students and postdocs. It was difficult to get people to realize that they were a credible company, because, you know, they're just starting out, they've had no business experience, but they're very coachable. And so getting people to believe in the technology and the people involved and coming on board and helping to hone the talent and the messaging and develop the market, I think, is the most difficult aspect of really any startup company that we start here. It's not so much the technology. I mean, UT is a top tier research institution. And so I think we struggle with getting our founders to the level where they need to be at to be involved and playing at the national level. And so, but that takes time, and that takes a village, essentially, of people helping out. And that's where our friends of the Texas Innovation Center has been instrumental in coming in and working together with us, with the startup company, to help people develop in every aspect. And so, you know, I showed you all these success stories, but those companies took about 3 years to develop. Like, that's the level of commitment that you need to realize when you go into creating a startup company. And even after 2 years, you're not done. And for our startup company, you know, it was a 15-year journey before we got acquired. And so people need to realize it's, you know, you just can't add water and then instantaneously success. And so
exactly, and for every success, there is a myriad of other tries that didn't work out, right? So a lot of the people that are watching us today, they're probably, you know, researchers, students among them, that are eager to, to start a company, maybe. And so, what would be your, advice, Van, for them to, if you want to start a company? What are the biggest challenges you see happening over and over again, especially when we're talking about IP-based, science-based companies?
Mm-hmm. I would say make sure you come in exploring. Just don't have the mindset of right away of like, I'm going to start a company. Have the mindset of, I'm going to explore the space and understand the level of commitment that I need to provide, and then start understanding what the market needs are. And that's where this needs-driven innovation is important. And the message that I want to send home to everybody is that you really need to understand where your place is for your research, where people are you really going to utilize it, where are you going to make an impact. before you start building something, before you just go down that pathway. You really need to be able to define the need that gives you the best and the most opportunity for successful endeavor. And people, I don't think, do enough of looking into what the customer voice is about. And we go on our own intuition, and often that's not the complete picture. And so, so really with this needs-driven innovation that we're bringing here to campus is just reminding people to just take some time and really understand like who needs this before you just start designing something and go on a specific path. Do it together with the voice of the population that that might need this. And so you never know where you end up. And so needs-driven innovation is a big deal here in starting out and going down the right pathway.
This is great advice. Thank you. So, Van, quickly, there is a lot of, actually in Portugal, there is a interesting phenomena on the, if you see the share of researchers, there are more women than men, which is great. It's a very good example. And so, do you see? But a lot of the startups that we see in country are led by men. So you being a female working entrepreneurship, what are the main barriers you've seen, and how would you? What is your advice in first person? Have you witnessed any barrier that is bigger than normal, or what would be your advice in that regard?
I think it's mainly not knowing about the resource available, and then also not having other role models that are people who can inspire you, and then having mentors who can work with you on these. There's a lot of nuance involved, as you can imagine, and so I think creating a safe environment for our female founders and our underrepresented minority founders to come and just test the water, and I think is a very important aspect. Creating community and letting them know that there are resources, not just at the university, but we have access to essentially resources across the country that can help them develop and learn and connect and build more friendship. And so I think that's where it's really important to get these female founders and underrepresented minority founders involved, is just letting them know that there are others like them doing it, and they can find out about these stories, and these people are very accessible to them. Inspiration.
This is great. Thank you, Van. So I have a follow-on question. So if you are, imagine that there is a growing startup in Portugal is starting, and they grow a little bit. They start first sales, and they want to make the move to the US. What would be your advice? What do you think the main barriers are? Because I'm sure you work with a lot of foreign entrepreneurs that are trying to get that to jump that way. So what would be your advice as well for those folks?
Well, the complexity is enormous. What I would say is, government regulations. We need to understand what those are. We need to understand if there is a market for what their product is offering here in the United States, because essentially the way to brand it or market it could be very different, because the psychology of the American population is very different than those in Portugal. So we need to kind of understand that critical aspect before we launch. And of course, I have friends here who do have an accelerator that focuses on how to transition overseas startups into the US. So contact me and I would love to connect you all.
That is perfect. Thanks. So if anyone is listening in and wants to talk to Van and her team, please let us know. We'll put you in contact. That would be great. So Van, any or the audience, anyone who wants to make a live question, please just raise your hand. We'll unmute you and we'll be able to put your question real quick. Give you some seconds. If not, wow, well, I really appreciate time flew. It was really good. Thank you very much, Van. Any final message to the crowd that is hearing us today?
Yes, good luck to all your endeavors. If you are, stay curious, and if there's a way to make an impact with your research, I would say explore commercialization, because it'll reach a lot more people, influence their lives, change it in new ways that we have never been able to anticipate. So upward and onward.
I appreciate it very much. Well, everyone, thank you very much for attending. Van, it was awesome to have you here sharing your thoughts, your ideas, your knowledge. I would appreciate it very much, and I hope to see you soon live. Thank you.
Take care. Have a great week.
Have a good one, okay? You too. Bye-bye.